Have you ever had a paranormal experience? What was it like? Probably 9 to 10 years ago, I was living in a sketchy 2-bedroom apartment with my sister and 2 to 3-year-old niece. My niece had her own room, and after a couple months there, she started waking up in the night and would wind up in bed with me and my sister. She stopped wanting to fall asleep in her room, so we'd let her fall asleep in our bed or couch and then move her to her bed. Well, after a few more weeks of her coming into our bed in the middle of the night, we finally asked her what was up. "Why don't you like sleeping in your room?" Her response, "Because there's a little brown boy in my room at night who tries to play with me. He was in my mirror and said oh." Needless to say, all three of us shared a room for the rest of that lease. Long story, but gets more intense. I'm trying to fall asleep one night, about 13 years old, and I hear this loud bang. I'm thinking something fell off of the dresser and I'm gonna get it in the morning. Nothing in my room has fallen. Weird. Next night, I'm about to fall asleep and my room gets freakishly cold. It's August, 90 degrees, and I hate the heat. Mother also keeps the house at like 76 degrees for whatever reason. I start squirming around and I feel this cold air grasp around me, and I hear my name being screamed right in front of me. The next night I tell a friend about it, then my cable goes out. I'm telling someone else about the story and I get a text from a random number saying, "I can turn it on as easy as I can turn it off. Test me, I dare you," and the room gets colder. Nothing seemed to happen after this, but I went downstairs to where my aunt and uncle were living at the time. Their kids' beds weren't in the back room like they used to be. I asked my aunt why and she said they are convinced there's a monster over there. I asked her why. She said the younger one will be shivering in terror, and when she goes to see what's wrong, the older one would sit upright and say the monster is here. When my aunt would ask where it is, they would both point in the same direction and say, "She's standing right there behind you." The kids were about 8 and 5. Imagination is a possibility, but both of them, at the same time where they pointed, was also directly under my bedroom. I will never be as terrified as feeling something latch onto my shoulders that way and hearing my name being yelled in the middle of the night. Pretty sure it was a demonic spirit or something. That was freakish paranormal. Parents never believed me. Never have been a believer in anything paranormal, ghost, scary stuff. Always thought this stuff was just BS. Until now. A couple weeks ago, I started working graveyard shift at a plant that fills cylinders with different gases, oxygen, different medical gases, gas for welding, that sort of thing. During the shift, it gets very dark, and it's just me and 2 other guys. Working graveyard is different. It's like a different reality. A different dimension. Things are just different. Anyway, years and years ago, there was an accident at the plant where 2 or 3 men lost their lives due to human error. Since then, there have been huge safety updates to ensure it never happens again. Outside of our plant, we have a bunker. It's where we store filled cylinders in case there is a leak or something. It's all outside. About once a week, I see people who are not there. People who are not real. Sometimes when I'm on the forklift outside alone moving pallets, I will see a man in the bunker watching me. I will drive to him thinking it's a coworker, but there is no one there. Sometimes I will see a man taking a break by leaning against the cylinders. Wearing the old-style uniforms and looking like he's from an old movie. They are 2 different men. Different builds. They are also 100% not my coworkers. I assume they are ghosts or spirits of the men who passed at the plant. They are calm and do not scare me. They are just watching us work. Taking breaks and relaxing. I used to work at a very popular, large amusement park. The happiest one, if you catch my drift. I worked the closing shift in the largest store on Main Street. If the park closed at midnight, the stores would stay open an extra hour until 1 a.m. for your shopping convenience. So typically, the closers would leave around 2:30 a.m. Security would close off sections of the stores as they became guest-free, and people were not allowed to return to that section of the store. One particular night, I was closing the jewelry shop as the supervisor. It was probably about 1:15 a.m., and we had just been cleared as guest-free by security. I closed and locked all of the doors, and my team started doing their closing tasks. As supervisor, my job was to count all of the jewelry and make sure it matched the inventory that had been sold throughout the day. I usually spread out quite a bit and would have large quantities of expensive merchandise out. So it was definitely something I did not want to do while guests were around. I start pulling out the jewelry when I notice a man perusing through the costume jewelry carousels in the middle of the shop. I stopped what I'm doing so he could browse in peace, not really thinking anything of it. One of my cast members asked what I was doing, and I said I was waiting for that man to leave. She looked at me, her eyes bulging out of her head, and we realized at the same time we had been guest-free for almost 10 minutes at that point. When I looked back, he was gone. There were a lot of ghost stories that were told around my department, and there were definitely some areas I worked in that always felt like you were being watched. I was lying in bed reading Jane Eyre about 6 months ago, and I have a set of wardrobes directly adjacent to my bed. Above the wardrobes, I saw a shadow. I just assumed it was a shadow of something on top of the wardrobes, but when I studied it closer, the shadow suddenly jolted back. As if it had seen me looking at it. This creeped me the flurbo out, and I actually got up and looked above. Pathetic, I know, to see if there was anything there. My first and only experience with the paranormal. At a dress rehearsal for choir in 7th grade, we were practicing choreography for the Footloose song. Out of the corner of my eye, there was a girl in all black. This was in a high school, however, this was a time nobody was really there, except for the choir, which could wear normal clothes, and adults' parents. Now, it's hard to explain, but the auditorium we were at had 2 wings, left and right. I saw this girl at the left wing. I could see her eyes were black. Pitch black. She went into the storage area that led out into the parking lot. That door is always locked, plus, it's an emergency exit. Our song ended a bit after. During the rest of the song, I kept my eyes on that left wing in case she emerged. She didn't. Once it was time for the 6th graders to practice, I went up to the wing. Nobody was in that room. It didn't lead to the stage either, just some sort of extra prop room. I told my closest friend about it, but he couldn't provide an explanation. Nobody else saw it. I swear on my deathbed, I probably saw a ghost. So me and my friends were hanging out, this was a year ago, before COVID, and we decided to head to this weird abandoned place. So skip to when we actually got there. The second we opened the door, you could hear the faint scream of a little girl. We stupidly ignored it and kept going, exploring literally everything. So it's a pretty big place, and things went down when we got to the 2nd floor. There was this old creepy mirror in a red circle, which I refused to believe was blood. There were pentagrams all over the walls around it, and some messages that wrote, "Get out of here while you still can." Or, "It's over now." We, being stupid, didn't leave and kind of talked to the mirror. I walked a little closer, and I saw a fleeting handprint just appear on the mirror. So I got scared but didn't back up. Then I felt something dripping down my face, so I looked in the mirror, and I didn't even see myself. It was a woman with burnt white skin, if that makes sense, and black eyes with long black hair, typical ghost look. At the top of her head, there was an upside-down cross slit into it, dripping blood. I was the only one who saw it, apparently. My friends all heard thuds and screams, and that's when we left. Still scares me. But before we left, the door we came in was closed. We left it open. There was a really loud thud, almost as if something was being thrown, and then a high-pitched scream. I'm really sensitive to loud noises and screams, so I freaked out and pushed the door open and got the flurbo out of there. Lesson learned. When I had a friend come over to spend the night in 8th grade, we stayed up till like 3. When he got to the point where he passed out on the couch, I was in the other room on my phone. To give some context, in between the 2 rooms, the one that I was in and my room in which he was in, there was the bathroom. Anyways, when it was like 3-something, I saw a tall slender black figure walk out the bathroom past my open door and into the living room. The house wasn't that big, so this little hallway place was 2 of the 3 rooms, and the rest of the house was the living room kitchen. This is important because when I saw it, I went out into the hallway and looked out to see the whole house and knew that it wasn't a person. After I scanned the house, I went to go and check on my friend who was knocked out cold, as was everyone else in the house. I still live in the same place and have never seen it again, and sadly, I have never thought to check the living room camera, which would have filmed it, but it was so far back that I don't have the footage. The high school I worked at was haunted. Like some of the other custodians and teachers I worked with, saw and experienced paranormal things. Like shadow figures, doors opening by themselves, things falling over, and a ghost was even caught on camera. A better answer was never given. One day in the summer, we were talking about how the school was haunted, and I, being the stupid person that I am, challenged the ghost to show itself to me if it existed. A few hours later, I was deep cleaning the library alone while my coworkers were getting us all sodas, and that's when I had my first ghost experience. It was mostly a vibe thing though. But I get this feeling I was being watched, so I turned around expecting to see somebody. There was nobody there. Something felt off, so I kept on looking around. Then I had this feeling like something was running towards me. I was getting some serious intuition to get the heck out of the library. But I was too scared to actually move. I'm going to sound crazy for this part, but for some reason, I could just tell whatever this was ran behind the bookshelf and was making its way towards me. I turned to my left, and boom, whatever it is, was right next to me. That's when I got this feeling like it lunged at me, and I heard this noise like somebody exhaling out of their mouth just once. After that, I ran out and waited for my coworkers who were supposed to help me clean the library to come back. To make things even better, a few months later, I learned that there was a fire in the library that killed 2 janitors in 1972. That was the only time something like that has happened to me, and working at that school never felt right again.